Hey guys, what's up? It's Monday, so it's time for another edition of the Breakfast Club. So, once again, I'm on a political topic, but this one I feel compelled to talk about because I think it goes to show just how corrupt our government system has become and just how far people will go to increase their profits no matter what's at stake, no matter how much integrity is lost, and no matter how many lives may be lost in the process. And I have to state that if you've not heard of this yet, no matter how weird this is going to sound or how crazy or far fetched, it's true. I found out about this from an audiobook that I was listening to, and with further research, I was able to verify it. And so in case you guys haven't heard of it, I just wanted to explain it to you now. Though this is sort of old news. It's just old news that may have gotten under people's radars. And excuse the expression of saying that, as you'll about to see in a moment. So, there is an administration in the United States that you may not have heard of. It's known as the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And basically what they do is they oversee the National Weather Service. And it basically is run pretty much by scientists and like meteorologists and basically other very duty-minded civil workers civil service workers who pretty much it's their job to oversee climate research. They monitor the weather. They're the ones responsible for all the data centers that collect information on the weather over the United States and even stuff worldwide. They put up the satellites that monitor all this stuff. They do a whole lot of work on monitoring the weather. Now, interestingly enough, NOAA, which is the acronym for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they're part of the Department of Commerce, if I remember correctly, which may seem like a very weird place for it to be under, but when you research the Commerce Agency, you find out that they're not really about commerce. They're really more about information, gathering information, which would affect commerce as well as a whole lot of other things in the United States. And so, of course, the NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, since it collects data and information on weather, it would be important to commerce anyway, because it's without the information that they've gathered, it would put, like, for instance, ships in danger when they're exporting or importing goods. Hurricanes and tornadoes within the United States itself could mess with the infrastructure with trucks going back and forth and things like that. Like it's a rather important information to have, and they've been doing some very good work. I don't really want to get too much into it because otherwise this is going to be a hell of a lot longer than it's going to be. But let's just say that the reason why we're actually able to come up with weather forecasts to begin with is because of NOAA. They're at the heart of all this information. If it wasn't for them, there would be no meteorologists, there would be no weathermen, and there wouldn't be all these other weather services that basically give you the weather. Like, how you can look it up online, if you look it up on your phone, just you being able to find out that in like the next 3 days there is a chance that a storm may break through, or it's going to be a bunch of sunny days. This information comes through this organization. Now, you guys might be wondering, why have I never heard of this when it comes to weather? Usually when it comes to weather, you've heard of something else. The biggest name in providing weather information is AccuWeather. In fact, they're so ubiquitous that you happen to see them like in news services everywhere. The AccuWeather forecast is... Now, AccuWeather may seem like a benign service, but they're actually in the business of selling that type of information. And they've done it pretty much by claiming that they're more accurate than all the other private services that give out, and supposedly monitor the weather information in the United States. Thing is, they get that information from NOAA, just like every other service does. And NOAA itself is a public or administration, which gets its funding from United States tax dollars. So it's kind of funny that they will then repackage and sell this information to other people and then claim that, oh, theirs is the most accurate weather around. But they're getting it from people who've been doing this for years and are the real unsung heroes. But unfortunately, the folks at NOAA don't really sing of their own praises. They don't, make claim. They pretty much don't advertise their work. And because of that, they tend to go unsung, and even worse, many times they even get slandered or slammed. Oh, why didn't they predict this, or why didn't they do that? When they usually do, most of the time, have a very good track record. So why am I mentioning this? Why am I talking about this organization, and why do I bring up AccuWeather? Well, last year, in October, there was a new head of NOAA announced. See, when Trump took over, the old administration, was wiped out, and they needed to have a new head of NOAA, a new person who was going to be running things there. Now, normally they pick a scientist or somebody who at least understands data information, how to gather information, as the head of the whole thing. But this was Trump who took over. And of course he took, as we all know, it took him a while to hire people that he wanted to go in there. And the person that he finally picked to run this organization is Barry Myers. And Barry Myers is CEO of AccuWeather. Anybody seen the problem already? Some of you guys may not see the problem. You might be thinking, well, he's in weather and NOAA basically monitors this stuff, so what's the problem? Well, the problem is that he's in the business of selling this information. And now he's in charge of the administration that is supposed to dole this information out to the American public for free. Needless to say, this is a huge conflict of interest, and he has already abused his position. Basically, he's now been stopping anything that the organization may do that he thinks that will cut into his profits. He's the reason why suddenly a lot of information that you used to be able to get on their website concerning, getting this information has suddenly disappeared. He's the reason why, for instance, you can't easily get an app that just gives you the National Weather Service's information right off the bat. Because, for one thing, it's against the law for them to advertise or do things, in a marketing way, period. But he's really been getting gung-ho into making sure that nothing that they do that would F with his profits will happen. All so that AccuWeather can continue to make money. And this has been a concern to many people who've been monitoring this, because they realize that if AccuWeather has its way, they can set it up so that you may never find out when a deadly storm or deadly weather event is coming unless you pay for it. And AccuWeather has actually done this before. There's actually documented evidence where they actually did get the jump on some information about a major storm coming, but the only people they told were their paying customers. If you were just some random schmo who happened to have gone to the AccuWeather website when that storm was supposed to go through, you would have gotten no information whatsoever unless you forked over the cash, like certain private industries and news services do. Yeah, it's that bad. And of course, the person who allowed this to happen is Trump, the guy who claimed that he was going to be draining the swamp. Now, if you have a brain in your head, you know how laughable that statement is, because all he's really done was open the government sector up to all sorts of cronies who just basically want to find new ways to milk money off of the American taxpayer and to get the government to, safeguard their profit making. And this is just another egregious example of that. What blows my mind about this is that this is happening to an organization that, quite frankly, if it wasn't here, there would be tons of lives lost in the United States, because they're the ones who basically, gather the information needed to warn the public when tornadoes are going to hit, or when a hurricane is going to hit, when a major storm event's about to happen. This is money that you are paying for if you pay taxes in the United States. You're supposed to get this information. But basically, we now have a CEO of a private industry that sells this information, who basically now wants the American taxpayer to pay for this information twice. And his excuse for doing this is, well, if this information is out for free, they'll cut into my profits, which is always the BS excuse used by businessmen who have more greed than ethics. And this has been allowed to happen at the government level, at the federal level. This is insane. What makes this even sadder is the fact that the people who work in this organization, apparently, as I stated before, they're not the type of people who sing their praises. In fact, from what I've read and from what I've seen, most of the people in that organization are the type of people who really don't care about fame or glory. They just care about getting the job done. If they got enough satellites up to gather the information, they consider it a good day's work. They're not the type of people who will go out and say, hey, we got this stuff up there. If they get slandered, they're like, who cares? Our work will shine through. That's the type of mentality they have. They're like pure, this is the type of quality you want to see in a public servant. Somebody who is in it for the service. They're there to serve the American public. They actually take pride in that. And that's all they need. That's all they care about. But now it's being run by somebody who cares about profit. And that guy was instated by somebody who only cares about glory. It's crazy when you think about it. So I'm mentioning this to show just one small example of how screwed we are currently when it comes to how our government is run. When something as simple as something as simple as the organization that monitors our weather can be screwed over for profit because the wrong guy happens to be in charge. And this happens to be an organization that, if it wasn't in place, the type of tragedies that happen when storm outbreaks happen could be even worse than they are when they do happen. This is not something that should have been given over to somebody who was going to basically put it in a box so that he can make more money. This is a service this was an organization that was put in place to make sure that American lives would be spared. This is an organization that was put in place so that American life and American business could function normally with minimal damage or minimal risk. I mean, of course, things can still happen, weather can still cause problems, and it's not like they have a crystal ball where they can predict the future, but they've gotten really good lately at being able to come up with computer models to help to predict the weather, and this was all for the sake of the average American citizen. This was not put in place so that a business can sell it to consumers. But that's what it's slowly being turned into. Or at the very least, it's being locked away so that the sold package service can be put in the forefront. And also, by the way, I guess I should also mention that anybody who actually does care about meteorology tends to have negative things to say about AccuWeather, period. Some guys even going so far as to say, as if you've got an app on your phone that links to it, you probably want to get rid of that app just for the sake of science. And again, the CEO of AccuWeather is now running NOAA. That's absurd. That's absolutely absurd. It's even more frustrating when you consider that this happened back in October of 2017, and I didn't really see much hullabaloo made of it. That's just, oh man. That's the sort of thing that kind of brings bile to the back of my throat. And I'm not really too sure if I'm doing a very good job of explaining just why that seems so egregious to me. But hopefully you get it. Hopefully you get it. But, I mean, I'm sure people are going to be saying, well, this is why we need to vote strong in November. And to try to change things and all that. But I don't think it's going to be an easy fight. If I'm going to be going off topic a little bit to kind of go into the main thing looming over this, the main reason why this is happening, people have to realize that the guys who voted Trump in, you know, for which, you know, of course now that he's president, he's able to, you know, put men like this in charge of, you know, government institutions. The people who are supporting him, his, you know, the guys who voted for him, are very galvanized to make sure that he stays in office. Like they do not want that to change at all. That's probably something that I should bring up in my next video, but they are very galvanized. And I am not so certain that, I mean, yeah, there's a whole lot of slogans of, you know, resist Trump and not my president and all that type of stuff, but I'm not really sure they are as galvanized as the right is in this particular instance. Willing to kind of put differences aside or to stop their petty squabbles in order to right the ship, so to speak. Time will tell, but if people want to be able to change things, they need to move fast. In fact, they should have moved yesterday. Because at this point, just about everything in the United States is being bought and sold. And if you really care about your republic, that shouldn't stand. Enough talking about that. Hope this gave you something to think about, and I'll catch you guys later.